chuckle in it. I'm a reenactor. And for 36 years in the classroom, I use living history to hook my students into the subject. Well, that would involve dressing the part. That would involve bringing in realia or manipulatives, basically artifacts, stuff you can touch. Alright, since I'm a very tactile learner, and a lot of my kids happen to be. And I try to make my room a kid-friendly museum. And I would immerse them in the culture, play the music for the time period in the background. I wanted to make it more real. Well, I'm not in the classroom anymore. So, like, what to do? Well, I have a room full of garb at the house. And I am involved in other, historical reenactment. But I also have a project that I'm interested in that would involve the garb at home and that passion that I have for bringing the past to life, which I still have. That desire to play history detective, an amateur anthropologist, and amateur archaeologist. That's still there. And that desire to preserve landmarks, because I've seen landmarks go away, get paved over, and there isn't even a plaque mentioning what was there. So what I'm doing now is on this very pretentious sounding Mission Odyssey, where I visit each of the missions in Alta California, each of the assistencias, those are spin-off missions, each of the estancias, those are ranchos that are designed to support the missions by raising crops and raising livestock, except that most of those are paved over or they have townhouses like all over them. And each of the presidios, those are the fortifications designed to protect the missions. And I'm gonna visit each of these places in garb, tell the story of each site, and create a visual record. So what I'm doing today is I'm going back to Mission San Juan Bautista because I talk too much, which is pretty obvious, and I keep finding more information, and I don't want the information to be lost. So I hope you stick with me on my journey. Padre de la Cuesta continued to run the affairs of San Juan Bautista until the mission passed into the hands of the Zacatecan Franciscans in 1833. After Padre de la Cuesta turned the direction of the mission over to them, he joined his own Franciscans at San Miguel, where he remained until his death. The Zacatecan period lasted a brief 2 years. After Mexico won its independence from Spain, it could not afford to keep the missions running as Spain had done, and in 1834, Mexico decided to end the mission system and sell all the lands. In 1835, under the Secularization Act, the mission was reduced to basically a local parish church, and its assets sold. In 1835, Nicolas Gutierrez, who was a Spaniard, who was living in Mexico, he was appointed to the position of governor. And this was at a time where Californios were really objecting to this sort of thing. They felt that Californios ought to be holding those governmental positions. They weren't agitating for independence. They just simply wanted to be running the show there. And one of the things that ended up happening is Gutierrez, now as governor, made some changes. He kind of tightened control on the customs house and the kickbacks and bribes that people were taking that were working there. And this outraged a lot of people. And Juan Bautista de Alvarado he tried to plead with the governor, and the governor tried to have him arrested, so he escaped. And what he ended up doing is he went over to Mission San Juan Bautista. Nice name choice. He spoke to a Tennessean named Isaac Graham, and he relayed his troubles, and he spoke about wanting to overthrow the governor. And Graham was quick to agree with him, and he got together 50 volunteers, because what Alvarado was proposing doing was overthrowing the governor, declaring California to be independent, and he would make it easier for foreigners like Graham to be able to get property. And so they marched on down from San Juan Bautista to Monterey, took over the El Castillo, pointed the one functional cannon at the governor's house, found the one cannonball that would fit it, fired at the governor's mansion, and by pure luck they happened to hit the roof, and the governor surrendered, and Alvarado stepped into power. Of course, he spoke with the Mexican government and changed his mind about that independence thing. Now, this is a prelude to the Mexican War, and it's going to take place just a few miles from Mission San Juan Bautista. John C. Fremont and his party of U.S. surveyors, and that was, the air quotes are there for a reason, were allowed to winter in California as long as they had followed an agreement to stay away from the coast. Apparently, the Mexican government did not really want them having very accurate surveys of that area. They didn't want them to have too much information. Well, Fremont didn't do that. There were reports that he and his men were spotted in the hills near Monterey, and they were ordered to leave California. Well, what they did instead is they retreated up to Gavilan Hill or Gavilan Peak, and what they ended up doing is they built a fortification up there, and there were some attempts at diplomacy and maybe some not so diplomatic words that were bandied back and forth, and then Fremont grudgingly left, but he'd be back. Fremont's going to return to the area of Mission San Juan Bautista in November of 1846, and there was a description I read calling this Fremont's shenanigans. Well, over the next couple of weeks, he's going to be gathering forces for his California battalion, and also gathering horses and mules in order to move them south and meet up with General Kearny's forces. And during that time, there's a battle that takes place a few miles from here called the Battle of Natividad, where when some U.S. forces were trying to wrangle horses, some Californian forces decided they would oppose that, and the end result was the U.S. got the horses. And on November 28th, Fremont is going to march south, and he's basically taking over a lot of towns in this part of the state pretty much without gunfire, because I guess you show up with a superior force, that's done. So he's going to continue to move south, and he'll, take over the mission of San Miguel. He's going to take over the Asistencia at Santa Margarita. He's going to get into San Luis Obispo and put Don Pico on trial for treason, and he's going to just move on south to getting the treaty signed at Cahuenga. Within 2 years of secularization, San Juan Bautista became a pueblo centered around the Plaza, that's directly in front of Mission San Juan Bautista. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at just what sorts of buildings would pop up around the plaza and how a town would grow. In 1840, shortly after San Juan Bautista was secularized and the pueblo is starting to grow, one of the first things built, which happens to be connected to the plaza and actually in between the Plaza Hotel and the Plaza House, or Zanetta House, would be this home, this two-story adobe that was built by Jose Tiburcio Castro for his son Jose Antonio Castro, who was the comandante for the northern part of the Mexican army in Alta California. When gold and silver were discovered in California, of course, you now have a whole bunch of people that are going to be moving into the state trying to get their piece of the golden dream. And that means the population is going to grow by leaps and bounds, and it will be attracting visitors. If you are going to become a bustling community, you need a fine hotel, a place known for its fine cuisine, fine liquors and wines. And the Plaza Hotel fit that bill. This was originally a one-story adobe dormitory that was attached to Mission San Juan Bautista. Well, in 1858, Angelo Zanetta added a second story, turned it into the Plaza Hotel. Now San Juan Bautista is on the map. This became a very, very popular stopping place because San Juan Bautista was a stagecoach stop for the trip between Los Angeles and San Francisco. And so this catered to those guests stopping off, but it also served as a headquarters for a number of stage companies, including the Overland Stage Company. In 1859, President James Buchanan returned what was left of Mission San Juan Bautista to the Catholic Church. So, directly across from Mission San Juan Bautista, on this side of the plaza, also near the Plaza Hotel, built by Angelo Zanetta, there's this building, which started off life as a one-room adobe dormitory for the unmarried neophyte women. When there was a devastating fire that ripped through the center of San Juan Bautista in 1868, Angelo Zanetta bought the property, reused a lot of stuff, added a second story, added a false wooden front and a veranda, and this became known as Zanetta House, or Plaza House now. And originally the plan was to make this the city hall if San Juan Bautista got to be the county seat for San Benito County. That didn't happen, so then this became Zanetta's family home. And with the construction of that second floor, the addition of that second floor, the timbers used in the construction, the floor had what people described as having a real spring to it. So this became a popular place to go dancing. With gold and silver being discovered in California, you have a rush of people moving into the state. And some people are finding a way to make money off of the gold seekers and the travelers. Angelo Zanetta built the Plaza Hotel in 1858 on the plaza for Mission, or former Mission, San Juan Bautista. He also built Plaza House in 1868, hoping this would be the city hall for what he was hoping was going to become the county seat for the new San Benito County. So it became his personal home. But now that you've got people coming into California, you have stagecoaches making the run between Los Angeles and San Francisco, and they're stopping here, and You've got all sorts of travel going on, and major stagecoach companies using the Plaza Hotel as their headquarters. So now you have to have a place to deal with the horses and to deal with the stagecoaches, and then also to deal with the freight wagons coming through. So Zanetta had the livery stable built, and of course he was calling it Zanetta Stables, but other people were calling it Plaza Livery. In the late 1860s, a wooden belfry was added to Mission San Juan Bautista. No bell tower had existed before. In 1929, due to dry rot and termite damage, the wooden belfry was replaced with a concrete one. When the tower's removal was announced early in 1950, the old residents of the area were genuinely fearful that the structure was being desecrated. The Mission was used as the setting for the climactic scene in the Alfred Hitchcock classic film Vertigo, released in 1958. Fans may notice that the bell tower does not exist. Since the tower had been removed a few years earlier, Hitchcock added a tower using scale models and matte paintings. The stairway scenes were filmed in the studio. During 1976 and 77, the earthquake damage of previous years to the Mission Church was at last repaired. Both side naves are now open, and the two-tiered campanario, or bell wall, with openings for 3 bells was added during the restoration. One of those bells is original. Well, we now have 15 missions accomplished, 7 assistencias done, 3 presidios, and now it's on to the next site. I hope you stick with me on my journey.